going to the team with us the day after tomorrow. Okay, so that's all the announcement. I'm very happy to introduce the afternoon session. And I know this morning we sat through a lot of different reflections, and I'm sure that there's a lot of resonance, questions, curiosity that's within you. And this afternoon we're going to deepen that, because usually day 2 is where we get a lot of information and we try to, as I said this morning, collectively digest what is happening and for potential transformation to happen. So this next session is on the role of science, innovation, and technology, how to put them at the service of ecological well-being. So very relevant and important topic. And I'm going to introduce the moderator for the session, who is Carlos, who is Secretary General of the Club of Rome. And I don't think needs further discussion. Without Carlos, we couldn't have put together this few days in China. So I just hand it over to Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you, Sun Qiao. So, we continue our journey. I've been learning from China, but also asking ourselves a lot of questions on the cultural and the material conditions for ecological well-being. In our reflections, in the reflections of the Club of Rome, the role of science, technology, and innovation is key. But we have also to question that, because it is definitely an activity which is taking and mobilizing a lot of our energies and human talent and creativity. And the big questions, if you wish, is all that mobilization contributing to the coming of an ecological civilization, to this reconciliation of Earth and humanity? The world invests, roughly speaking, $2.5 trillion per year. $2.5 trillion per year, which is not a banal amount, around 2% of the total GDP, in research and innovation and technology. And that investment has a huge impact, because when it produces results, the consequences of that are exponential. Now, how much of that is invested for sustainability, regeneration? The first answer to that is, sorry, we don't know. We don't know how much of that, but we know for sure that it's a small amount compared to the total. So this is the initial provocation, and in this session, we'll have 2 keynotes and then also a panel. And to start with some elements of responses, we have the privilege to count with Paul Srivastava, who is not only co-president of the Club of Rome, but has been very actively involved in trying to mobilize the energies of research and innovation towards sustainability as executive director of Future Earth, a global network of research and interdisciplinary research and transdisciplinary research for sustainability, but also later as a director of the Sustainability Institute at Pennsylvania State University. So, Paul, thank you for being available, and the floor is yours. Big applause, please.
$2.5 trillion, did you say? I'll take a small percentage of that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this conversation on the role of science, technology, and innovation, and how to put them in the service of ecological well-being. And thanks, Carlos, for that kind introduction. My personal welcome to all of you who are here and not yet asleep in this afternoon. With a special thank you to Edwin Kay and Bernice Eng, who are going to join a few minutes later, and Salvatore Mocchia, and I believe Peter Schlosser and Nebojša Neskosenovic. Naki is they're going to send some video to add to the thinking around the role of science, technology, and innovation. So clearly, this is a very big topic, since science and technology undergird virtually everything that we do in life. They are a defining feature of modernity. And in the limited time that I have, I'm not going to talk to the whole topic of the role of science and technology, but to particularly pay attention to aligning science research, scientific research and progress with ethical, social, ecological values and well-being. That's sort of going to be the focus. And I'll do this by trying to do three things. One is sort of point out the political, economic context in which science gets done today. What is this big enterprise of science? I want to give you a little bit of sense of that. Then I want to talk about what I see as key challenges. There are so many challenges. I'll limit myself to talking about the three big ones as I see them. And then I'm going to propose the notion of a peaceful scientific research agenda that will allow science to move in this direction. And you will see in a second why I am picking on peace, or what I call planetary peace, as the orientation for science and technology. Okay, so I begin with the assumption that science is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it has produced enormous benefits. We live longer lives, we have so many products, we have higher standards of living now than ever before. We are living longer, and many, many people around the world are benefiting from the work of science. But on the other hand, they have also led to the creation of weapons of war and mass destruction. Science has also aided in large-scale exploitation of nature and destruction of natural environment. And many people have not yet benefited. So the benefits are very unequal. There are many parts of the world where the benefits of science are simply not available. So aligning science with our eco-social well-being goals is not going to happen happenstance or automatically or by default. It has to be managed. It has to be intentional. It has to be deliberate. So we'll take a look at what this means, beginning with the political economic context of modern science. Science has been around for maybe 300 years, and over this time it has gotten institutionalized. The big science that happens around the world, the $2.5 trillion that gets spent, it's not spent by individual scientists and researchers. There is big technological equipment. There are some equipment that alone, a single piece of installation could cost you $500 million. There is a big scientific infrastructure, an administrative infrastructure of hundreds of thousands of people. Carlos mentioned Future Earth that I led earlier before I came to Penn State. That alone had 50,000 scientists working on just sustainability research. So if you look at the big picture of the scientific enterprise, it is a way of life, it is a sector of the economy, it is a hugely institutionalized process, and it happens within organizations, laboratories that are owned by universities or by government agencies or by military organizations. And each of these organizations have varying underlying motives and purposes. So parlaying science in favor of ethical, social, well-being goals is going to require some management, not only of scientific work, but the entire ecosystem of scientific regulations and scientific frameworks, the international distribution and pathways of science, its funding infrastructures, as well as its internal operational logics. Clearly a huge and challenging task. Let me turn to what I see as the basic challenges for making science aligned with these social ecological goals. Number one, and I'll just talk about three, although I have a much longer list. The first one, I think, on a global scale, we are entering a period of uncertainty and readjustment of the global economic and security orders. The relative peace and stability of post-World War II decades has ended. There are currently 4 ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza and Sudan and the Congo, among other places. The world is in a process of significantly increasing the amount of money that gets spent on defense. The United States alone, for the first time in history, is going to spend more than $1 trillion in 2026 budget, defense budget. It used to be around $800 billion till 2024. And Mr. Trump is also pushing NATO countries to put 5% of their GDP into defense. China this year increased its budget by 7%, India by 6.5%. By 2030, the total defense expenditures are going to be about 5% of global GDP. 5%, when today, in 2024, the number was less than 2.5%. So we are looking at a world where arms and armaments are going to be a huge source of expenditure, and some of this money is going to go to science. There is enormous amount of this money that already comes through defense departments, energy departments. I'm at a university that has a $9 billion budget, $1.5 billion of it is research, which comes from departments of the government one way or another. So this kind of money is not going to result in the eco-social oriented science that you and I are hoping for. In fact, it is going to take science in the opposite direction, in the service of war. So that I see as the first challenge for science. The second challenge is around the credibility of science. Yes, for you and me who have been educated in some form of science, we think about it as a superior form of knowledge. And even though we criticize it for not bringing in traditional wisdom, it is still considered to be the way we need to develop knowledge as a modern society. There's wide consensus. The scientific worldview and scientific knowledge are superior to other forms, and this view is now being challenged by a variety of things, including populism, including social media. Social media has now enabled multiple versions of the truth to take hold and exist within large populations. This problem of truth erosion is manifesting in increased fake news, alternative facts, disinformation, conspiracy theory, propaganda, outright denial of scientific consensus. You saw a little bit of that going on even at this conference. To give you a few examples, in the United States, in our current 118th Congress of the United States, the body that governs the country, 123 members of 450 have gone on public record denying a 100-year consensus on climate change. Leaders of the Federal Health Department in the United States are denying the broad scientific consensus on the efficacy of vaccines. They ignore the thousands of scientific studies about vaccine safety and efficacy and falsely link it to autism. The state government of Florida denies the connection, the benefits, the scientific benefits of the use of fluoride in water and has banned the use of fluoride. It is actually causing public health damage to the country because of its denial of science. A recent Pew Charitable Trust study suggested that 38% of Republicans in the United States now say they have not too much or no confidence at all in scientists to act in the public interest. As a result, we are seeing pressures to cut funding of science, and we are seeing pressures for ideological redirection of science and scientific work and standards. And this is not just in the United States. In India, there have been recent criticisms of the rise of pseudoscience and unscientific claims promoting the superiority of ancient Hindu Vedic knowledge over modern science. Some state or provincial governments have actually banned the use of scientific theories in the classroom. Example, the theory of evolution and the periodic table. which is in chemistry, one of the fundamental basis for knowledge. So this issue of the challenges of credibility of science, I think is serious. It makes it harder to align science towards ethical, ecological, and social values and well-being. The third challenge I want to bring out to you here is the influence of a new class of people that has emerged, and I'll call it the billionaire class. There is a now clear documentation available on what this group of people want science to do. And it is different from what you and I imagine science to be doing. We think of science as primarily being in the public interest. But there are very important people with a lot of money. And I will name a few because these people have actually put their name on paper and there's documentation, Elon Musk being one of them, Peter Thiel, who's another Silicon Valley CEO, being another, even J.D. Vance, who's the vice president of the United States, is in this group. And their vision for science is to see investments go into private and corporate benefit rather than into public benefit. So their vision of humanity is that science science should be created to make humans more cybernetically sophisticated and make them a multi-planetary species. So investments into AI, investments into space travel, investments into all kinds of other technologies that involve weaponization. I mean, the fact that more than 80% of all AI research monies are being invested through the Defense Department into weapon systems. So their interests are very different. And this would have been okay if they were just quiet, rich billionaires having a good time. But they are influencing policy. They are spending real money in large amounts to influence how science gets shaped. So this kind of capitalist class, the scale of money and the political influence that they wield, there is real danger that future science may go in a direction opposite to public, social, and ecological well-being. Now, these are big and foundational challenges, and for global science to unify on ethical and social grounds, we need a new purpose for science. In my view, it is not sufficient for science to just produce knowledge to satisfy our curiosity as intelligent human beings, nor is it sufficient for science to produce knowledge that creates new products and services for a consumer society. We need a higher purpose for science that serves humanity's self-preservation needs and supports the emergence of eco-civilizations. This is something that scientists, political business leaders, all must engage with and develop in the coming years. And here I want to suggest that one concept that I think can help us repurpose science towards ethical and social well-being. And this concept is what we call planetary peace. In the past year, the Club of Rome has launched an initiative on planetary peace. If you go to our website, you can see the documentation and papers behind it. And I think we can all agree that peace is a precondition for sustainability and for life to flourish on Earth. By planetary peace, we imply not just peace among nations, but also peace within oneself and peace with nature. And it is a dynamic and a regenerative force, as we see it, that is rooted in social justice, in sustainability and global cooperation. Rather than addressing the symptoms of insecurity and conflict, this vision of peace targets the structural roots of ecological degradation, extractive and exploitative economic systems, technological misuse, and the enduring legacy of colonialism. Planetary peace is an active system, a systems-based process that centers the well-being of people, planet, and future generations. It calls for long-term global cooperation and prioritizes regeneration over depletion, equity over domination, and collective flourishing over individual gain. And I think planetary peace is also essential for science itself to thrive and progress, and for establishing innovative economic cultures. So I hope that as part of this conference, and particularly this decade, this conference is part of the International Decade for Science and Sustainable Development. I hope that we will be able to, under the umbrella of Earth-Humanity reconciliation, that we can collectively examine the possibilities of building a planetary peace-centric science that favors ethical and social ecological values and well-being. If science does not move in this direction, I'm afraid that it will be completely instrumentalized and dehumanized and serve the interests of the billionaire class. And it could well become a tool for oppression and exploitation rather than, and I'm seeing the sign for time there. Okay. So let me close by saying that I would urge all of us who are involved in science as researchers or workers or advocates to, one, become more aware of the political economy that is shaping science today. And each country has a different version of it. Second, speak up in favor of science as a humanistic ecological enterprise in the service of planetary order and well-being. And three, center your own science proposals and research projects and impacts on planetary peace outcomes. Your voices are important, your scientific work is important, and your public advocacy is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for this eloquent formulation of where science should go. Hopefully it will, instead of it shouldn't. Now we have a second keynote speaker, because one important element of this reflection on the role of science, innovation and technology is to overcome the silo effect. Not only the silo effect of academic disciplines, which is well known and can lead, to very narrow developments within each of the disciplines, but also the silo effect of, science is an activity which is completely separate from the applications. And this is why we have invited, and we're privileged to have with us somebody who has been with the hands-on working on innovation and design. I think he has some really interesting experiences to share with us in an industry which is particularly challenging from the point of view of sustainability. And it is the fashion industry, because fashion is almost, sustainable fashion is an oxymoron, is a contradiction in terms, but he will show us how he has been working on that oxymoron with considerable success. So Edwin Kay from Hong Kong, family from Shanghai, I learned recently, is the chairman of the board of Fast Fish, which to me, sorry to say, didn't say anything, but is a big fashion retailer in China, Hong Kong, and Japan with almost 3,000 stores. So not a small player. Edwin, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Big applause.
Thank you, Carlos. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here. The Limits to Growth came out when I was a freshman at university, and it changed the direction of my studies and subsequently the direction of my career. And so I feel very honored to be amongst all of you. And as my parents are from Shanghai, I grew up in Hong Kong. It is strange for me to be speaking in English to you. 不好意思，我是香港人，所以的普通话有限，所以要用英文。对不起。My heart language is Cantonese, and my Mandarin is terrible. So I'm going to try this in English. I work. I have multiple roles in this industry, and for the last 12 years, I also ran the Research Institute for Textile and Apparel, which is an applied research center in Hong Kong. And when I tell my academic colleagues that that's where I work, they would more than one have responses. Oh, you work in the Valley of Death. The applied research center is where good research ideas go to die, is how they explain it. There is a significant challenge to get things out of laboratories and into the marketplace. So I would like to spend my time on the innovation and the technology side of things, but also talk about maybe some of the practicalities of why it is so difficult. And one of the challenges when we talk about why we can't get things out of labs is because there is probably a fundamental disconnect between academia and the marketplace. And a lot of research are done out of intellectual curiosity, but perhaps without due consideration to what is the market value of that, or the urgency or the priority of that particular type of research for the marketplace. So they go nowhere because they're sort of stuck in the conceptual stage. So that's one of the challenges, but the other challenge related to that is that oftentimes research projects come to research centers, applied research centers, as half-baked ideas or half a solution, or a solution without the context of where's the application, how do you bring this to market? That scientists have thought about this as the tree without looking at the forest, and so the problem is that there's a significant problem in the pathway of getting these ideas out of the lab. A lot of it has to do with execution. And I must say, I abandoned my original presentation after listening to all of you for the last day and a half. So these are thoughts that I have in context of what I've heard. I think this morning, what I thought of is that a lot of the times when we talk about things not getting to the marketplace is maybe some of the challenges we all face today collectively in this room. We are a room full of mice who think it's a great idea to put a bell on the cat. The challenge is the execution, right? And so that's what we find ourselves in sometimes. We have to figure out how do you get these ideas to the marketplace. And one of the last challenge I think of too is that we use the different vocabulary in academia to the business world, and we, first of all, the basic assumption is that we think that the marketplace will work and do things for us out of the goodness of their hearts. We're going to be disappointed if that is the basis of where we start. And we do have to create the market case for this. And so we have to speak in a language that is understandable to the markets out there. And that we have to paint this a picture in a way that is intelligent, understandable to our peers out there. So what are the opportunities, if those are the challenges? The opportunities that I would like to suggest would be that first, and this may be painful for some of us, the first is for us to take what I would call the software approach to getting things in the marketplace, the 75% solution. All of us are trained scientists, and we want to be rigorous, and we want to be robust in our solutions. But sometimes that takes too long. The unit of measure in academia is years. The unit of measure in the business world today are days, hours, seconds. We just have to move faster, and so we need to figure out how we can get there. And one of the ways to do that is to introduce version 1.0 of our research. And we know that when we buy version 1.0, it has bugs, it has to be fixed along the way, but it is a 75% solution. And in my mind, a 75% solution is much better than a 0% solution. We can't think in our traditional unit of measure anymore. How would we act if our house is on fire? You know, think about how the scientific community responded to the pandemic, in which we took 15 years worth of work and done it in 10 months. That's the type of house on fire mentality that we should think about, the urgency of the task before us today. A multidiscipline approach, I think, would be very helpful. That in the research lab I ran, we had a multidiscipline research teams because we want to, in parallel and concurrently, solve all the problems that we see getting things out into the marketplace. So what is the business case? What are the scientific challenges? What are the communication opportunities? And how do we present this? And where do we get the money from to get this financed? Why don't we do all that simultaneously so that we can have all these things a much faster time frame? Now again, this sort of we are taught that we need to have small scale proof of concept experiments. We have bench scale experiments. We have pilot scale experiments, and then we publish papers, and then we go for funding. That's the 15 years I'm talking about. What if we are able to figure out a way to truncate it for this particular challenge that is in front of us? And then finally, the idea is to encourage our peers to put their efforts in the places where we need scientific innovation breakthrough the most. And the notion is to go out and solve big problems. We are so responsible, and we are so that we try to parse things out into the smallest unit of measure possible. And we're so conservative to make sure that we demonstrate results that oftentimes the big things that need solving are the ones that we don't attack. Young people should not be spending their time working on minutia, but we should encourage more and more people to try and solve world hunger or find a cure to cancer or whatever it may be. And again, the idea is that we shoot the moon, and if we land somewhere that is in the stars, what a great place to be. We succeed when we fail, and we encourage our young people to fail and give them lots of opportunities to recover from these types of the challenges. We should encourage a lot of boldness and courage, rather than to be safe. At the same time, inconsequential. So, some thoughts from the context of where we are in China. This is the place where first movers is important. Getting there fast is you can see the rate of development that we've been talking about over and over again last few days of what is happening in this place. And so moving quickly is important. And so how can we encourage each other to do that faster? This is a place in which we see things are valued if they are at scale, if they are to the benefit to the maximum number of people possible. So how do we get things to scale as quickly as possible? And that is something that we need to really work on very hard. And finally, the idea of global partnerships, which is so almost in the DNA of the Club of Rome. And if you look at the composition of the room, you know what I mean. I grew up, when I was born, I had a British passport, and then I have British National Overseas Passport, and I now have a Hong Kong SAR passport. I have not moved. Because I was in Hong Kong, I met my wife, Claudia, who was from Waterloo, Iowa, diametrically different from who I am, and her life experience is completely different from mine. But we got a chance to meet because of the time that we were in. And Paul just mentioned it. And the times was that we have been living through 70 years of relative peace that is rapidly coming to an end. And so whereas global or international collaboration was quite natural for us once upon a time, it now takes a lot of effort. And it turns out the 70 years of peace that we lived through is a historic anomaly. That we are now returning to the state that mankind usually finds itself in, which is at war and with a lot of turbulence and uncertainties. So how do we work hard to build these types of international bridges of understanding, collaboration, and partnership? And how do we intentionally work on it so that we are able to get together and more often and create more understanding, and in the process actually lower the temperature for global conflict, and that we can enjoy a little bit more peace, because in the times that we're in right now, I can't think of any topic that the world can agree on globally other than the topic that we are discussing in the last 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edwin. We have two recorded interventions. First from Peter Schlosser. Peter is the director of the Global Futures Lab at Arizona State University, and he's one of the persons who made ASU, Arizona State University, the leading university in the US in sustainability. We happen to have one of our colleagues of the Club of Rome who is also sitting there, Michael Dorsey, who is also a professor at ASU. So if you want to know more about ASU, ask him. And also Stephen Hartman, the executive director of UNESCO Most Bridges Coalition. ASU is an important partner in that coalition. So let's listen to what Peter has to share with us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in the session on the role of science, innovation, and technology, how to put them at the service of ecological well-being. When we think about the future of our planet, we are tempted to focus on the seemingly ubiquitous crises. Every day, headlines report on extreme events occurring across the globe, reminding us how fragile our world has become. Yet, behind those headlines is another story, one defined not by despair, but by possibility and opportunity. So what is the foundation of these possibilities and opportunities? Through science, we have significant insight into not only the nature of the problems we are facing, but also the options for solutions. We are not limited by science when it comes to making progress on changing our decisions so that they will lead us onto a path towards a positive future. We actually have more knowledge than we are translating into action. This holds for science that addresses environmental problems, as well as issues related to our societal stability and social dynamics. Many institutions, including academia, are increasingly focused on innovation. For example, discovery that is implemented into action. The pace of innovation in the area of planetary health is high. What is lacking is the pace at which these innovations are scaled up. Many innovations have been tested on a small scale through pilot projects, but the investment in scaling them up to regional and global footprints is slow. Many of the pressure points we are experiencing were caused by the use of technology. Technology plays a significant role in the development of society, but it can also have adverse effects. We often overlook these negative side effects. We need to change our approach because technology will play a crucial role in solving the existing problems. To highlight these topics, I will use the Global Futures Laboratory as an example of how we can benefit from science, innovation, and technology in our efforts to shape a future of ecological well-being, a world in which all life will thrive on a healthy planet. At the Julie and Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, we turn challenges into opportunities to innovate, collaborate, and drive systems change. As a prototype for a university for the future of our planet, our strength lies in our transdisciplinary approach. We unite scientists, scholars, policymakers, youth, and indigenous communities to co-design pathways towards a more equitable future for all life on a thriving planet. We see this in the work of the Center for Negative Carbon Emissions, where researchers pioneer direct air capture technologies that remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and repurpose it into circular economic systems. Through Energy Forward, we accelerate the transition to renewable energy by advancing solar technologies and forging community partnerships that make clean energy accessible and resilient. At the Rob Walton College of Global Futures, part of the Global Futures Laboratory, we empower students to become change makers who think beyond disciplines and lead with the imagination needed to shape sustainable futures across every field of human endeavor. Across these efforts, we recognize that knowledge alone is not enough. The values we wish to see embedded in our shared future are the very values we must practice in how we create, collaborate, and innovate today. This is not only what we discover that matters, but how and for whom. Innovation must serve life. It must reflect care for the systems that sustain us, respect for the communities we impact, and foresight for the generations that will inherit the consequences of the choices we make today. Only by aligning innovation with responsibility can we build a future where both people and the planet thrive together. Thank you.
Thank you to Peter, and we have also a recorded intervention by Nebojša Nakicenovic, who was for 10 years or so the deputy director at IASA, the International Institute of Advanced Systems Analysis, based in Luxembourg, close to Vienna, which is another occasion for me to give an historical note about the Club of Rome, because this institute is sort of a child, if not of the Club of Rome as an organization, definitely of its founder, Aurelio Peccei. It's a unique case. The same year that the Limits to Growth was published, 1972, this institute was founded by an agreement between the United States of America, the Soviet Union, China, France, United Kingdom, and some other countries, total 12 countries, to work together in systems analysis about the big challenges of humanity. So not a small feat to achieve that. 1972, middle of the so-called Cold War. IASA still exists. If you want to know more about IASA, it happens that our director of communications, Philippa Baumgartner, who is with us, was working at IASA before joining the Club of Rome, so doing the reverse trip. Let's hear to Nebojša.
It is great to be at least virtually in China, and I'm really sorry that I cannot join you this time in person. So I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to participate in this session on the role of science, innovation, and technology, and how we can put them at the service of the ecological well-being. First, let me say that monumental, converging, and cascading challenges are facing the world, from wars of unprecedented destruction to human suffering due to exclusion and widening inequalities, economic crisis, and geopolitical disruptions, and importantly, escalating pressure on the Earth system. The Chinese word crisis literally translates into danger and opportunity, meaning that the multiple converging and cascading crises facing humanity can also be seen as an opportunity for the way forward. Thus, the humanity is facing formidable problems and opportunities that require evidence-based policy advice. Yet, science has disciplines. Here I'm also including all forms of knowledge, humanities, medicine, engineering, and law. So I'm not arguing against disciplines, as they are the fundament of our knowledge, but I'm arguing for much more horizontal to complement the vertical nature of the disciplines. This means that the scientific advice needs to become more systemic, as these formidable problems facing humanity require approaches that are inter and transdisciplinary, that are integrated and holistic. Arguably, science has made essential contributions ever since the emergence of the Industrial Revolution. On my watch, this was exactly 200 years ago, on the 27th September of 1825, with the first steam railway from Stockton to Darlington. This ignited explosive development through convergence of steam, coal, steel, textiles, and many other technologies, bringing fundamentally new behaviors, institutions, values, and norms. Human development was impressive. Global economy increased some 100-fold, but unfortunately also carbon dioxide 30-fold during these 2 centuries. So as the result, global mean temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius last year. Particularly impressive was the development during the past 5 or so decades, often called the period of the Great Acceleration, that improved life of many, but also left billions behind without even access to basic needs, while endangering to unimaginable level planetary system, like climate and biodiversity. So we truly live in the Anthropocene. Arguably, science, technology, and innovation are needed more than ever. At the same time, trust in science is eroding, political cycles are short, while complex problems facing humanity require long-term vision. Science, technology, and innovation would be central bridge between self-centered, short-term gains and interest, and what needs to be done and how to achieve a just future for all. That also means that the science has to be transformed. In my view, a safe and just future for all can be achieved through disruptive and inclusive changes of our societies, values, norms, and behaviors. But this will require doing much more with much less. That means sufficiency of providing more services with less resources and impacts on the Earth system. A new integrated, systemic, and holistic pathways to achieve the grand transformation. Digital revolution, along with the convergence of other disruptive transformations, despite many inherent dangers, hold the promise of helping achieve safe and just future. The potential is here for the integration of digital and other innovations into new systems and new human activities. A good example of the power of digitalization is the disruptive nature of digital mobile phones and their incredible potential effect in enabling fundamentally new human activities while reducing specific energy requirements 100-fold and material requirements 25-fold, as well as the greenhouse gas emissions compared to the analog devices they replace. And everybody in the world has a mobile phone, incredibly, including some billion people without affordable access to electricity. So the humanity might be moving toward new civilization thresholds. The digital transformation calls for comprehensive social steering, perhaps even a new social contract. This means a new set of regulatory standards and normative frameworks, physical infrastructure, and digital systems to capture the benefits of the digital revolution while avoiding the many potential downsides. In conclusion, let me just say that an essential priority should be to develop transformational science, technology innovation roadmaps to better understand the potential benefits and dangers of digitalization and how to leverage transformational change towards sustainable future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Nebojsa. Just to building up on what he said, we will have tomorrow a session on these, technologies that we hear so many times mentioned, AI, quantum, biotech, and asking the question if they are contributing to ecological well-being. Now we will have a panel, so I would ask Paul and Edwin to join us, but also Salvatore Moccia, who is you can come to the stage, who is the Director of Education and Skills of EIT Digital. That's an organization of the European Union promoting digitalization to address, please, don't be shy. An organization, I was saying, promoting digitalization to address humanity's challenges. And we have also Bernice Ang, who is a complex systems analyst. We met recently in Singapore. She's from Singapore. And we immediately resonated in the work she's doing, because she's not only a thinker, but also a practitioner, being involved in projects of urban development, so doing the work on the ground from these complex systems perspective. So I will ask all of you the same as in previous panels, in particular Bernice first, and Salvatore, your reactions to what you have heard, and maybe your questions to our keynote speakers. Please feel free. Bernice, you need a mic, you have a mic. Yes.
This is what, yes, okay. Thank you, Paul, thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Carlos, it's great to see you again. Thank you, Paul, for the call to planetary peace, and Edwin, your reflection on endeavoring sustainability in the current time, and what it means for where we are in science and innovation. So I'll build on that with how systems behave, and what that means for the kinds of research and innovation we should select for the kind of civilization that we want. Over the last couple of days, we've heard the two mountains idea, right? 绿水青山就是金山银山. Sorry, my Chinese is terrible. I try. Ecological beauty is economic value. And nature doesn't just show us what to value, it shows us how value is kept. And it's in the leaves of plants. So those who heard me in Singapore recently will know this story. Do you know why plants are green? Pardon? Okay, yes, chlorophyll, very good. So chlorophyll is a good biological answer. The physics answer is they're green because that's the common one that's talked about, because they reflect green light, which yes is roughly 500 nanometers and whatnot. But the odd thing is green light carries some of the most energy-rich light from the sun. So the deeper evolutionary question is, why reflect away the rich light at all? Now, let me just check back to my notes. Yeah, so why do we, why is nature so inefficient, right? So think of sunlight shining through a canopy. It's dappled, the light is shifting, it's not constant. And plants didn't evolve to chase every peak of energy, right? They evolved to smooth the fluctuations. They even have a safety valve function. It's called non-photochemical quenching, which is essentially dumping the surplus energy as heat to avoid photooxidative damage. And in statistics language, it's to reduce the noise, right? So that the signal of photosynthesis stays steady. And it's the same with our own bodies. Not that we can photosynthesize, although that would be very cool. Sorry. So as I tell my medical students, right, this is homeostasis in action. When we're too hot, we sweat. When we're too cold, we shiver. This is life favoring balance over raw efficiency. And I know for a Singaporean to even question the doctrine of efficiency is practically sacrilege. So living systems use balancing loops that smooth out volatility so that core processes stay within safe ranges. Sorry, I'll get over my jargon very soon. Civilizations need the same habit. Right, we actually have a framework for this, and you've heard it many times already. It's planetary boundaries. Rockstrom was in Singapore, Professor Rockstrom, he was in Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and the latest analysis is sobering. we have transgressed the 6 of the 9 boundaries. And that puts us, in Rockström's words, at a precipice. But it's a precipice with a small window of opportunity to turn things around. And we are trying to do this in a world of live conflicts, right, to your points, Paul and Edwin, and also Peter Schlosser and Prof. Naborsa. So with this current moment, with ongoing wars, with frayed trust and growing intellectualism, that's exactly when civilizations are tempted to sprint for throughput, right? When we need most to protect the slow foundations that are in service of life, right? As Professor Schlosser talked about. So there are 2 tensions that I can see as to whether technology helps us or hurts us. And the first is techno-optimism versus sufficiency. Efficiency is vital, but when efficiency lowers unit cost, sometimes that counterintuitively results in higher consumption, right? Unless we decide what is enough. This is Javon's paradox. The second tension is green growth versus well-being. GDP can keep climbing, while the stocks we actually depend on for life, like soil carbon, aquifers, social trust, they decline. Growth is helpful when it grows what we depend on, but it's harmful when it eats at our foundations. The test for any shiny solution is, does it replenish our slow variables, not just lower impacts per dollar? So then, why do we keep optimizing for extraction and under-maintaining our foundations? And I offer 3 questions. You ask these 3 questions of any system. What do we count? Who defines problems? And how do we handle time? The first one, if we mostly count price flows, GDP, unit costs, earnings per share, then price becomes the only truth, and unpriced realities like soil, water, biodiversity, attention, trust, they go off the dashboard. The second, if boards and shareholders define the problem on their own, then selection bias sets in upstream. Right? What does this mean? This means that the harms that are borne by affected communities, they stay out of scope, right? Like what Prof. Naborsa shared. And in this moment of anti-intellectualism, reflexes and the erosion of trust, it punishes uncertainty and expertise. And then we start selecting slogans over shared facts and science. And the third, how do we value time? How do we treat time? If time is treated on short horizons, like quarterly earnings, and discounting of future costs, and this is stuff that Shahar talked about as well, right? Then we make future harms cheap on paper, right? So that we underinvest in the stocks that actually keep us safe, soil, water, biodiversity, all that good stuff. And then we also tolerate long-tail risks like climate, infrastructure failure. So you put all these factors together and you get the same pattern every time, which is care becomes a cost center, relationships become transactions, slow foundations are underinvested. And that is commodification as the organizing principle. Only what has a price is legible and the rest is invisible. One doctrine that hard codes this is shareholder primacy, right? Maximize short-term financial returns to the current capital owners as the corporate goal. You set that goal and the reinforcing feedbacks reorganize to serve throughput. So this form of capitalism behaves like an unchecked growth function. And in the human body, in medicine, there is a name for this kind of unchecked growth that ignores the health of the whole. It's called cancer. So what would it take to design for health instead? It turns out that this is old knowledge, very old knowledge. Mampela reminded us yesterday our deep human story of our shared ancestors moving across and beyond Africa. Across continents, indigenous governments and codes design rules that have kept societies within biophysical thresholds over long cycles. Principles of reciprocity, kinship, consent with land and water, some of humanity's oldest technologies, one might argue. And they just so happen to create feedbacks that replenish slow foundations while meeting what humans need to thrive. So if planetary boundaries tell us where the cliffs are and our penchant for commodification explains why we drift towards them, then our job, the role of science, innovation, and technology is threefold. Right. One is science shows which slow foundations must be replenished and where the limits sit. Innovation proves designs that actually replenish them, like Edwin's kind of a very exciting work. And then also technology that scales those designs with stewardship. As Donella Meadows and Professor Randers, I'm not sure if he's here, have taught us through Limits to Growth, the deepest leverage is the goal of the system, right? Change the goal to living well within biophysical limits and the feedbacks rewire accordingly. So I'll end with this. In a living system, in nature, there are no externalities. Everything shows up somewhere. Let me see. Yeah. And so my last little analogy is going back to the plants. Like the plants filtering sunlight, we also have to learn how to reduce the noise of commodification and pay attention to the signal of what matters. Things like relationships, time, and life itself. So may our science, innovation, and technology, all of our human ingenuity be in service of that.
Thank you. What I love in you, Bernice, is whatever the time you have, the depth of your concepts make it a keynote, you know, and under the title, if you didn't get it, from plants to civilizations, you know, in this case. Salvatore, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I have two questions for the two key speakers, but allow me 3 minutes to get to the questions before. So first of all, Kevin, you were talking about this multidisciplinary approach, and I love the idea. So I have the privilege of being a professor of strategy, working in the field of technologies with 25 universities from 13 different countries around the world. So I can observe the things from your perspective. So just to understand how technology can really have an impact on well-being, let's go to a practical example to better understand the concept of this multidisciplinary approach. For example, today everyone is talking more and more about, for example, the agri-tech. So what we can do, how we can use technology for better farming, precision farming, et cetera, et cetera. And also I see there are a lot of new startups entering into the field. Now, think about that. At the end, it's a sort of robot or sensor or whatever it is that is monitoring something and is giving information, et cetera, et cetera. So only that, I would say, stupid thing, but it's not stupid. I need, first of all, someone expert in robotics. So Department of Robotics, School of Robotics, whatever it is. These people, they should talk possibly with someone expert in a better system. Because if you want to have that sensor of that robot in the field autonomous for 30 days, you should create an embedded system that should be autonomous. Then you need an expert in solar energy. Then you need an expert in data science because you need someone to do the software for that system. Then you need an expert in cloud and network infrastructure because that data will go to the cloud. And then you need an expert in cybersecurity because someone can take out those data. So imagine this. And now think about how the universities are structured. And think about how many departments, how many professors should talk to develop, let's say, this stupid, as we said, but it's not stupid, machine. So this is the problem today. This is what I deal every day with those kind of problems, because I design programs, master programs in technologies, and I try to design programs that are cross-disciplinary. I invite professors to sit in the same room, professors from same disciplines, and try to design a program that is cross-disciplinary. But this is a big challenge. And again, I have the privilege of working with 25 universities, different departments, and I can do that. But in reality, if you see the things only from one single university, it's a big challenge, because at the end, each professor, each department, they are proud of what they are doing, and they do not like, let's say, to talk to the others. They talk to other peers, they talk to peers in data science, peers, but they do not usually talk to cybersecurity. Now, one thing that is important today, I see the arrival of artificial intelligence is changing the things, not because of artificial intelligence, but because artificial intelligence is impacting different disciplines, and so people, they start understanding that they have to do across a multidisciplinary research. Because, for example, if you talk about cybersecurity, cybersecurity can be impacted by artificial intelligence. And now, cybersecurity people, they say, oh, I need to talk to data science. And so, the first question to you is then the following one. We have now the big opportunity, for example, in use of advanced materials. Advanced materials, it's another field where we can really put everything together. Do you think that those advanced materials, and I saw the textile industry is using already a lot of advanced material, could be a big opportunity to start, let's say, developing this mentality of research, multidisciplinary research, as Neboisa also was mentioning, this holistic approach? And then I go to you, Paul. I like also the idea, the second challenge that you put, this credibility of science. And you were also saying that today we have different truths. So, and when you were saying that, I was remembering, for example, the Platone, when he was talking about the allegory of caves, where you have prisoners in the cave, they saw the shadows, and they think that it's the truth. And so I believe you are living more or less the same period of time. Now, linking the question before and what you were saying, do you think that we need to go back to those kind of researchers as they were in the past? They were everything. They were philosophers, they were mathematicians, they were mostly holistic researchers. Do we need those kind of, let's say, researchers today? Thank you. Thank you again.
You're welcome. So, Paul, Edwin, whoever.
Yes, so short answer to your question. I think if you look at our apparel, I'll talk about apparel first, and I want to also talk about a multidiscipline approach to research. This is the heaviest, most expensive, dumb piece of technology that we wear around every day. It has single use, and whereas everything else, a watch, our cell phone, take care of us, we have to take care of our clothes. We have to clean it, we have to take it off when it's warm, but put things on when it's cold and what have you. So the opportunity to turn this into a wearable system that protects us, that informs us, that keeps us healthy is incredible. And this is such an old tech. We are wearing 100-year-old technology, that the opportunities to use this as a backbone for all sorts of things. You can imagine telehealth, constant monitoring of the environment that we're in, and all sorts of opportunities that we can incorporate into what we put on every day, a limitless one. So one answer to that. The two, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of doing well, doing good. I think this came up, I think, also in your comments. The retailer that I work with in China is successful, but it is one of hundreds of thousands of other retailers that is in China that exist the last 15 years. How did it become successful? On one principle that they discovered, and that is that they have a social mandate to work with underprivileged girls in China. So if you go to one of the stores and you see the advertising for recruiting for staff, they say, if you are a female, if you don't have a university education, or if you're from the countryside, we would like to talk to you because we give preference to hire you because this is the entire population of this company, which operates close to 3,000 stores. Because what they discovered is that girls in China, usually, especially from the countryside, don't have the educational opportunities that the males may have, or they are just the talent going to waste. So if you hire girls from the countryside and you train them, they work outrageously hard, they're dedicated, and everybody is promoted from within. And what we are finding is that so today in this company, there are girls in their late 20s who manage several $100 million of business piece for different parts of China, and they came through the system, and they work hard, and it's a win for everybody, right? Because they're so highly motivated. And now we're just launching the second generation of this, which is that go back to the countryside. We'll finance you to open stores. We'll be co-investors with you. You will be the owner of the shop, and we'll give you all the tools to make you successful. I think that's the type of win-win that we have to figure out. How do you do well, but phrase it in a way that it make economic sense, and that it is not a charity case. This is for a high-performance organization. And then finally, I'm sorry to be long-winded. I teach. I teach at the Wharton School. I teach innovation at Wharton School, and every year we bring MBAs to this part of the world. This year we brought a group of MBAs to visit TSMC, and the class had just one huge question for TSMC, which was, how did you get to be in that dominant position that you're in which the world has to go through your funnel because you are the only supplier for of those innovations. And they had a long answer, but at the end of it, they said, for every product that we introduce, we ask 3 questions. And it's a 3-city question. And the 3 cities is that, where is your Hsinchu, where is your Shenzhen, and where is your Hong Kong? You have to have those 3 cities to introduce any new product. And so what do you mean by that? Hsinchu is where all the engineering is done. It's a suburb outside of Taipei where everybody's an engineer, and they have thousands of guys working on new products all the time. So you need a place that is really skilled at just the fundamentals of the product. Where is your Shenzhen? Shenzhen is where you do the scale up, the prototyping, and you build your production line, and you do your small scale production, because things that work in the lab may not work in the real world. So you need to figure out how to get those things to market. And where's your Hong Kong? Hong Kong is how you create the road to market. Who is going to finance all of this? Who is going to pay for all of this? How are you going to make money with this product? I think what oftentimes when we talk about interdisciplinary solutions, for me, it is a very real world practical a business proposition. And I think we have to think upon those terms, that we have to be not satisfied to have great concepts, but we really want to have great impact with everything that we do.
Thank you, Edwin. Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to answer your credibility question after I answer the multidisciplinary question, because for 20 years I've been struggling with multidisciplinary question. I find it very amusing that people say that we can become multidisciplinary. The reality of disciplines is that we will never be able to achieve it, for the primary reason that the number of disciplines that now exist. When the University of Paris was founded, there were 4 disciplines: logic, math, divinity, and medicine. Today, what would be your guess of how many disciplines there are? It's not in the hundreds, it's in the thousands. The National Science Register of Disciplines in the United States lists 15,000 disciplines. And the one in which me and you teach are not included in it, because business studies is not a discipline. But there are 15,000 disciplines in which you can get a PhD degree, there are journals, and if you add the disciplines in China and the rest of the world, you're probably looking at 30,000 disciplines. You could not even read the names of those disciplines in your entire academic lifetime, let alone bring about integration. I think science has benefited greatly by breaking things down into smaller and smaller pieces and go deeper and deeper. The need today is to get the big picture, get the unitive thinking behind how the planet operates, the planetary boundaries that have been mentioned before. And so I think we need to think about this question of multidisciplinarity not in simplistic terms of who can we bring together, the 5 or 6 that can create a product, but what can we do with science so that it encourages that kind of unified thinking. And there was a presentation earlier by Jude Caravan in the morning that talked about unitive thinking and how that might be achieved. On the question of credibility of science and whether we should be going back to Plato's cave or whether we should be developing more holistic thinking, I think my answer would be yes. I'm not sure that after the level of fragmentation that we have imposed on the human mind for generation over generation, how much of that unity can still be retrieved and nurtured and developed, but certainly that would be a skill that would help us to understand the challenge of today, this idea of building an eco-civilization. If you think about how many disciplines are involved in an eco-civilization, your example of agrotechnology had maybe 5 or 10. Yeah. So I think we need to move towards that integrative thinking, integrative research, integrative skills.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Maybe we need to put upside down the model, no, and start from the questions from the ground. You know, maybe the way to unify, the process is take a real challenge in the context where it happens, and then you look for the disciplines that you need to address that challenge. A little bit like you were mentioning in your example, make fit very, very much siloed, structured in so many disciplines, so high fragmentation, and make that structure try to analyze, to produce results for the ecological civilization that doesn't look like good, look a good fit. It will not. It's not the appropriate instrument unless you give the priority to the challenges and, by the way, to the people who are living. The challenge have to be defined by the people. But that's my opinion. We switch to questions from the audience. We have one or more questions from online attendance. So Rad, I think Rad is there, yes. Bit hidden, but we can hear. We will hear you. If not, so.
This question is from Christian Berg. He says, "Good afternoon. Thank you for this important session. I would like to follow up on the aspect of Edwin's talk, speeding up science. In my view, today's problem regarding the world problematique is not that science is too slow to come up with answers, but that policymakers do not care about scientific insights to an alarming degree in many parts of the world. A pronounced hostility towards science has emerged, not only in the United States. This should concern the Club of Rome in 2 ways. The Club of Rome has always brought together outstanding scientific minds, and scientific expertise has been part of its core identity. At the same time, we must acknowledge that reason and scientific studies alone are clearly not sufficient to motivate people to take action. Thus, centuries-old certainties, such as the belief that reason provides a reliable foundation for organizing human coexistence, are under severe pressure. What do you think, and how should the Club of Rome respond to this? Thank you."
I'll give an example. I agree that governments move probably at the pace of academia, and that they are very responsible, and the pace may not match the crisis that we're in right now. A couple of years ago, UN came to me, a group from UN came to me, and they were working on production policy standards to reduce pollution in manufacturing, in the apparel industry. And they've been going at this for multiple years, and they're not getting anywhere. So, and we had a conversation, and I convened a group of manufacturers And we went to Geneva and we had a great conversation, and actually fairly significant changes happened on the ground in multiple countries where these manufacturing are taking places, because today large manufacturers, one manufacturer in multi-locations, and two, in some smaller economies, they are the dominant provider of export dollars, or the major employer of a lot of the people in that country. So my point is that, yes, there are also, you mentioned that there are these billionaires who are evil and wicked, but there's also an opportunity to take advantage of these large organizations, in my case, manufacturing organizations, and work with them, because once they are in agreement and we're aligned, they then propagate that standard to 5, 6, or the dozen countries that they manufacture in. And because they are so large, they basically dictate what the industrial rules of engagement are going to be in those countries. Because today, large multinationals don't invest in manufacturing facilities, they invest in industrial parks, and so, or whole supply chains. So one opportunity is to try to move quickly, but maybe circumvent some of the national players, because in reality, I think when we see this, for better or for worse, the large multinational companies actually have a lot of say in what happens in this space and in other space.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a couple of questions. One, Mampela. I think. Okay, Louis first, and then Mampela. Go ahead, Louis.
Thank you so very, very much, and thank you to the panel and the keynotes, which really draw a landscape, a picture of where we are today with acceleration and all that comes with it, and how science navigates in there. Any process of inquiry, learning, and understanding, be it outside or within science, starts with inquiry, starts with a question. And what comes up for me in the picture that you're drawing, we say, are we asking the right questions? If the question is guiding the direction, what alternative questions should we ask to have all the acceleration and the scaling in another direction? So, to all four of you, what would be the one question that you would embrace as an alternative question that sets the entire apparatus that you're describing on another trajectory?
Wants to
I can take this.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a challenge, actually.
Well, this is very much a Club of Rome challenge, because we say what we do in the Club of Rome is to ask better questions. So this is a provocation.
Yeah, it's a very nice question. So when you were making this question, I was thinking about, for example, some activities that usually we do with the students, no? And trying to start from a question, no? And basically, whatever I do also in my daily activity and with my teams, I always ask two basic questions. What can we do differently, and what can we do better? So if you just use those two questions, you will see that those two questions will open a new, let's say, entire new world in your people, because they will start wondering if there are other options. Because sometimes we think that the only options, that what we did in the past, it's the only option that we have, and that is not true. And then I like also, and it's not a religious thing here, but I like to connect, for example, those two questions to something that Pope Francis wrote when he wrote the encyclica Laudato Si. So our common good. What kind of planet, what kind of world we would like to leave to the others. So now, if I start with this question and I connect to the other two, I have really a lot of work to do. So what kind of planet do we want to leave to our children? And then, if I remember this, I go back to the other two questions. What can we do differently? What can we do better? So those are, I believe, some basic questions that each of us, we should start answering at whatever level we work.
Very interesting. By the way, this year is the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. Yeah. So some members of the club were present at the celebration in Castel Gandolfo of that 10th anniversary. Very spot on. Paul.
Add on to Salvatore's response. If I'm understanding the question correctly, how do you, the question is to reset trajectory. The trajectory can be reset in many different ways. So you could understand it as an economic trajectory or as a social trajectory or a personal trajectory. And I'm comfortable with the way you answered it, that what would you do differently? And in place of the word differently, I would use the word regeneratively. Because I think in a lot of areas of life, we have set ourselves on a trajectory of extraction, whether it is economic extraction or in terms of personal relationships with each other. We don't give back. We don't feed and nurture. We don't feed and nurture the soil. We don't feed and nurture the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, the forests, and so on. So to me, regenerativity is the way for the trajectory to get new purpose.
Great question. I think I have actually two questions that maybe is that I would ask. The first question may be what role do you want to play? And I think in my mind, there's only three roles that each one of us can play. We either are a bystander, a victim, or a participant, right? Pick one, right? But what roles do you want to play? I think is important for us to decide. And then I would approach it more selfishly. The next question, which is that 50 years from now, how will people remember you? What is your legacy, basically? And because I think that we are at that point in history, right? We are at that, it's the Industry 4.0 giving way to Industry 5.0, in which AI and all that, but also we're at that point in which we are the last generation that can make a difference, or we are going to be passing on, the first generation that really screwed up. But we're at that point, and we have to make a choice. And 50 years from now, what do people say of us? Is either one or the other.
So my answer piggybacks on Paul's point about regeneration and also expands on one of my own questions that I offered just now, which is I said, how might science support life, be in service of life? And I would expand that to say, how might economy and how might society be in service of life? If we ask the question about economy, then it's asking us, how do we value, how do we exchange, how do we count? Right? And then if we say, how does society serve life, that's about institutions. How are the institutions we're going to organize and operate under serve this purpose of life and regeneration? So yeah, that's it.
I'm tempted to quote you, Bernice, fabricate a fake quote coming from you saying, the question would be, what would plants do for a better future? That could be a question that we could ask ourselves, Mampela, please.
My question really is about all of these points that you're making, which I agree with. Is it possible to have the academy ask those questions of itself, given that we have institutions that pride themselves in being part of the past, and the world would rather have something coming from Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard than from a new institution that is innovative. So the incentive structures in the academy, and I speak from scars on my back, are not yet aligned to encouraging this multidisciplinarity, yes, innovation, but not in a way that you will ab initio be supported because we have an innovative idea. You've got to find ways within the system. So the question I want to ask all of you is, where is the mindset shift going to come from in the academy? And who is going to be the inspiration, or how are we going to create the inspirational impulse where we have science in service of life rather than science in service of promotion?
Easy question, isn't it? So, Salvatore.
I have, this is really my personal opinion. So, and yeah, you are right. We should change, we should shift the mentality. And again, this is my personal opinion. And it goes back to the journals. So, journals, I do not have the data. One day I will dedicate part of my life to make the analysis. But there are very few journals that are fostering multidisciplinary approaches. And there are a lot of journals that you can publish if you present data. So what does it mean in reality? That you have to focus on your specific topic and you have to provide data. Otherwise, they will not publish your paper. And if they do not publish your paper, you will not advance in your career. So if, again, this is my personal opinion, I do not have data to support what I'm saying, but again, I believe that if we would like to start a kind of multidisciplinary approach, we should have more journals that are open, good journals that are open to disciplinary approaches, and they are also open to publish theory, models, not only, let's say, data. I have this idea, what do you think? And open this idea to the others. But again, this is my personal opinion. Happy to know the opinions from the others colleagues.
Yeah, so I've been in universities for 45 years now. And my impression of what universities are is a little bit different from some of the assumptions underlying this question, Mamfella. I think of universities, at least in the United States context, the big ones that you and I are familiar with and have worked in, they are institutions now completely driven by a kind of corporate model of existence. If you look at their business model, that business model gets its revenues from certain sources, and not all of the sources are intellectual sources. I mean, a big state university like Penn State, where I teach, we have significant revenues from football. Our football coach, when we fired him last month because he lost 9 games in a row, we had to pay him $50 million payout. Now, if you think a university, this is what happens. Most people don't know these things. So games, sports, TV revenues, these are a big part of the business model of any university. That's why sports and games are so important. That's why coaches get so much money. Coaches make more money, 10 times more money than the president of every university. All the universities, this is true. So what are universities now? And what kind of mindset are they promoting? And what kind of operational policies do they have to have? So there is a university today is like a little nation. Actually, our annual budget for my university is more than the GDP of 42 countries. We have 23 campuses around the state. So my president is not just a president of a university who's looking for mindsets that would promote intellectual work. He's a manager of a big city. We have airports that we manage. We have fleets of 400 cars that we manage. So I think we have a kind of idealistic view of Harvard or Cambridge or Oxford being these temples of knowledge creation in a kind of pure way. But I think that's a fantasy. The real university is an institution. It's a corporate institution with a very compelling business model. And to change that business model, to bring about sustainability, for example, as a topic. I served as the chief sustainability officer for my own university. We had 200 vice presidents that I had to convince to bring sustainability into their department, their division, their unit, their college, their campus, etc. And the first time I went and talked to them, they said, what is sustainability? Because they themselves don't know. They were taught engineering in a different time or taught medicine or taught. So I think that the challenge of changing institutions, mindset is a small part of it. It's not that it is not important, it is important, but it's not the entire thing. These institutions are big ecosystems, and it's like a knife battle inside a telephone booth. You have to deal with every single individual if you're going to convince them that they need to change. And I think a lot of the work is around leadership. I think you need to work with leadership, and you need to have patience.
Thank you. Fortunately, we will not have so much patience now because we are almost running out of time. But please, Edwin and Bernice, your maybe a concluding remark sparked by Mampela or whatever else.
This is a important topic that we are discussing. We didn't spend enough time on it, but it is something that we really need to figure out for us and for the generations to come. This actually drives where civilization is going, and I really hope that at the end of this we begin to behave as if our house is on fire. I really do wish that we have that sense of urgency and passion about what we are on about. 70 years ago, when we began this journey, I think there were still lots of options and lots of things that we could have done. Every day from here on out, it's going to be fewer options and more expensive and more difficult to solve. So it behooves all of us to really spend the time on figuring out how to make these shifts and changes. It's the next generation and generations to come depend on it.
Thank you. Bernice.
Yeah, I'll respond to Mampela's provocation, which is I have a nerdy answer and a socio-political answer, and I'll be brief. The nerdy answer is one of my pet interests right now is a field called network science, and it's some very cool mathematics that you can use to describe the properties of networks and discover things like who's the most influential node, who's the most like bridgey node, or it could be a gatekeeper, and like who has a lot of connections, that kind of stuff. But then that assumes you have the data, which may not always be the case. And also it risks getting into a very like deep state conspiracy kind of campaign going on. The socio-political answer comes from my past life as a youth activist, where one of the ways that we tried to engender youth action and social mission projects was to think in terms of peer influence and junior influence, like generational influence with our juniors. So I would kind of think in the same terms for academia, which is like, what's the peer influence? And that is something what Salvatore talked about, the journals, right? And also like, what do the cool kids think are cool? So then who are the researchers that are considered the rock stars in their fields and are the influencers? And then accordingly, if you want to broaden this to beyond academia, then who are the influencers in whether it's parliament, politics, business, the Edwins who are influencing, textile industries and all of that. And then, so that's peer level. And then with your juniors or with your next generation, so this is where professors as educators, there's a huge role that it does take a while for that to pay off, but it will. And the one to many, the 1 to n number, n is very large with, of course, probabilities. But yes, there's a few different channels. And I think ultimately this is a matter of critical mass. because not all minds are equally right to receive, right? And if they're not, it's kind of pushing against a dead wall anyway. And so then with these two levels of like peer and generational, then just amassing those who are champions, those who are ready and open-minded to receive.
Thank you, Liz. Well, as you said, we need much more time. Sorry, but for now, this session is closed. I want you to give a strong applause to our panelists. And I leave it back to Tongxiao, sorry.
Thank you so much, dear panelists and Carlos, for the excellent moderation. We will have tea break now, and then at 4 o'clock, we're actually breaking into 2 parallel sessions. So literally from the bigger room to reaching across the room, and hopefully in smaller networks, we can have deeper communication. And that will not be in this room. We'll actually be in the 2 rooms that direction, same floor. So right now it's tea break, and at 4 o'clock, we'll see you. You can choose between one of the 2. One is on regenerative transformation of industry, cities, and mobility, and the other one's on community building for ecological civilization. So enjoy your tea.
Thank you.